Welcome back to CFB Nation. This is the Garnett Roost. I am your host, Nino Brown. I got my guy, Deep Fried Draft, Brian Bosarge in the building, as always. And there's only 1 week of positivity before the Samba show came back. Brian, how we doing, my guy?
I really wanted to keep the positive going. And I thought it might last a few weeks, but good Lord, how awful was that offensive performance? I should say, how awful was that offensive performance on Saturday against Old Dominion, barely squeaking that game out.
Yeah, like I said, I was very frustrated about a lot of things. We're going to get into a lot of those things. I know there's a topic that you are very disgusted about. But let's get into rapid fire. Let's run down the gauntlet quick. You ready?
Let's go.
We're now looking at back-to-back years where the offensive line just can't seem to figure things out. It was Old Dominion, for Pete's sake. Is Lonnie Teasley's seat getting warm now?
I mean, he's been on the job for a game. So, I don't know.
No change. No change.
Well, as I've gotten the notes below, they're technically 5 sacks to the good from last year's opening week performance. So, improvements, I guess.
If we want to stay positive there, we can't stay. We'll just roll right into it. 5 in the green from last year. Over under 40 sacks allowed. We got 4 to start out week 1, my friend.
They don't play Tennessee, so that means they don't get James Pierce. I'm trying to think.
It was Old Dominion, and they got 4 allowed.
It's bad. It's bad. I don't know. I'm gonna. You know what? I'm gonna try to say. I'm gonna say under. I'm not gonna say it's gonna be under by many. Maybe 1, but it's you know what? I take it back. It's gonna be over because I don't. Lenore Sellers is going to take sacks where he's trying to run. Mm-hmm. And I think that's that's a huge part of the 4 sacks they gave up the other day. Those weren't pass rush wins. No. Those were Lenore Sellers has no idea what he's doing in the pocket yet.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a few more bumps in the road before we get to the straight and narrow. I think we could see 50 because of Sellers' inexperience back there, trying to run around, do a little extra. Yeah. All right. This sounds crazy, and when I was typing it out, I was kind of like, but what I saw this week, I know it was one game. Is it possible that Mario Anderson had a better year last year than we will see out of Rocket Raheem this year?
I'm gonna say no. I think Sanders ends up getting it going.
Okay.
Once the offensive line maybe gels a little bit as we go along. Maybe the holes get a little bit better. He did not look explosive.
Yes, that's my
in the game on Saturday, which is a bit concerning for me for a player that was kind of what his game was built on. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if maybe he's just not recovered or not. Juju McDowell, to his credit, was the more explosive running back in the few carries that he did get in the game on Saturday. And who was the number 2? Attaway.
Attaway, yeah.
He didn't do jack.
No.
And with a few carries that he got. So, matter of fact, I think he averaged like 1 yard a carry. Wasn't good. No, I think Sanders, gets it going, towards the end of the season, ends up outpacing what Mario Anderson did, who, by the way, I just looked up their box score. Didn't do a whole lot in Memphis' game Saturday. So,
no. Plus 11 minutes in the time of possession, plus 3 in the turnover category, and they really only had 5 penalties in the game. How was this a 4-point game? Are we in for a very, very long season? Are they going to play down to competition?
I hope not. We're going to get into it later in the show, but this game Saturday is going to tell, I think, everything about their season this year.
I think that was my sentiments exactly. All right, rapid fire has concluded. Let's get into one of my favorite segments of the show: the good, the bad, and the ugly. Give me the good.
There's no other place to start than Dylan Stewart. We mentioned him last week as, we were hoping he would get in some. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he ended up just playing almost a chunk of the game. There's no way they're keeping this guy off the field, and his playing time's only going to go up from here after that performance against Old Dominion. He has just some insane. I mean, everybody's seen the one highlight by now of where he literally just standing still, ducked under the Old Dominion tackle, and just closed on the quarterback. He's a maniac, man. His closing speed. He is the best pass rusher South Carolina's had in one game, and I'm going to say this, in one game since Jadeveon Clowney. Against Old Dominion, 4 tackles, 3 of them solos. I thought he should have got credit for 2 full sacks. They credited him for a sack and a half, 2 forced fumbles. He had a 97.4 PFF grade. Now you're a PFF guy. That's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
His best single game grade for a Power 5 edge rusher since 2020. He was the SEC co-defensive lineman of the week in his first game with his teammate Kyle Kennard, who we're going to get into a little bit more later. Just an insane first performance from Dylan Stewart.
He has to start next week. This kid is the guy, and you just, as much as he can give you, you let him give you. Him and Kennard on each end could be a problem if they can figure, the offense out. And these guys aren't on the field all game. But I think they're going to be a problem for SEC quarterbacks because they're going to shorten the window that they're going to have to throw because they both can they complement each other so nice. You're muted.
Them causing disruption might be a necessity for the secondary. We'll get into that a little bit later. But the other good thing to me this week was the defense as a whole. Without the defense this week, they lose to Old Dominion in week 1.
Yeah.
I mean, South Carolina's 2 touchdown drives this week spanned an average of 4.5 yards. That's a fact. Both of their touchdowns in this game came on drives of 3 and 6. That's it.
Not good.
No.
At all.
Not good at all. They only allowed 3.2 yards per carry, gave up 197 net passing yards. The bulk of that came on whatever the hell DQ Smith did on that 70-yard touchdown play late in the first quarter. They end up with 5 total sacks in the game, 4 fumbles, recovering 2, picked off 2 passes. Like I said, set up the only 2 touchdowns inside the 6-yard line. Kyle Kennard, co-defensive player, the defensive lineman of the week in the SEC, had 4.5 tackles for loss, 2.5 sacks. He forced 2 fumbles. He transferred over from Georgia Tech. Demetrius Knight transferred over from Charlotte. He started at linebacker, had 5 solo tackles and tackle for loss. DeAndre Jules transferred over from Pitt at the interior defensive line, had 5 solo tackles, recovered a fumble, and blocked a kick. And then Debo Samuel continues just to be a stud out there. 7 tackles in the game, 5 solos, and he also recovered a fumble. So
Debo Williams. Debo Williams. You said
I'm sorry,
Samuel.
Debo Samuel. Debo Williams.
No, hey, Debo is in midseason form. He looked like
he's ready to go.
Yeah, he's ready to go. Hey, my guy Jalen Kilgore with the interception to close out the game, right? Yeah. Like that was big. They were driving. There was a possibility that they might have, made this right down to the wire game.
Yeah.
Your guy.
When I initially watched that big play, I didn't know if it was Kilgore or DQ Smith who was in the wrong there. And then when I saw the replay, I was like, no, Kilgore was just trying to chase.
Yeah.
And that was all DQ Smith. Burnt toast on that play.
Had one, right? But that was just by good fortune. Tip pass landed in his arms.
Yeah.
We're having a problem with getting burnt.
Yeah.
By
it's down the middle.
Yeah.
Every time. The corners aren't getting beat.
Well, I don't know. You mentioned it last week with Tulu, right? Last year.
And it happened again to some guy whose name I don't even remember.
Isaiah Page.
The guy, and you talked about him last week.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was the guy that beat him deep this week. And they're just running simple post routes, and the 2 safeties are just getting confused as to whose responsibility is what, and they're just running free. And by the time they catch the ball, they're 40 yards down the field.
Yeah, and missed tackles don't help because Page
The,
made him
the end of that,
yeah.
there's a DQ Smith. That was awful. The last good thing we talked about, because we were concerned about the kicking situation last week. I'm less concerned than I was about it last week. Alex Herrera, I thought he struck the ball well, 3 or 4 on his field goals, made one from 40, 46, and 33. He did miss a 48-yarder, pushed it a little to the right, had 6 kickoffs, 3 of them touchbacks. I'm less concerned with Herrera than I was going into the game. I think he'll be fine as the season goes on.
Notre Dame liked having Mitch Jeter.
They sure did.
For sure. He was the reason why they won. That's for sure.
Yeah.
All right, give me the bad. It's gonna hurt me a little bit, but give it to me.
It's gonna hurt you a little bit, and I'm trying not to worry so much about it as much as it was just the first game. But Lenore Sellers' decision making and accuracy was not good at all. Only completed 43% of his passes, 10 of 23 for a just paltry 114 yards, and everything he threw was high.
Yeah.
There's some big receivers and big targets on that team, and you're missing those guys. He threw 2 hospital balls, one to Harbor where he got kneecapped, and one to Jarrett Brown where he got hit in the rib cage on balls that were high. Both of Harbor's 2 targets, more on that later, were high, including, like you said, one on the sideline should have been an easy pitch and catch, and he threw him high and outside, carrying him out of bounds where he couldn't make the play. Best ball he threw all day. He threw a perfect moonshot right down the field to Jared Brown, the Coastal Carolina transfer, who is super fast. I figured that out pretty quick in this game. He's the second fastest receiver on the team. But he just dropped it, out and out dropped it. No other way to describe it. Would have been called back anyway for an ineligible man downfield. More on that later. Sellers QBR 17.7, which was dead last amongst all SEC passers in week 1. And as you noted here, even worse than Florida's Graham Mertz, who was just, if you watch the game, he looked worse than Lenore Sellers did, but his QBR passing was worse, but Sellers, made up for it a little bit running the football.
Right. Two things I took away from that. How bad is Robbie Ashford? He couldn't win the job of Lenore Sellers. If Lenore Sellers looks that not ready in week 1, that's bad because we got nothing behind him if it doesn't work out. Doggins, you're supposed to prepare this kid. He looked like he was a deer in the headlights. Like, he looked like, again, like I said before, spring game. It looked like we were in a spring game and you were trying to figure things out. You've already gone to 2 camps, a spring game. Like this should have been, I'm not saying you should have went out there for 360 and 3 touchdowns and no hiccups, but you should have had at least 250 plus. Should have had 2 in the air and 1 on the ground, and you should have looked like what the hype was about. Everything I saw beforehand, he looked like he was not ready out there. And like you said, I think he had the yips a little bit because he was excited because everything was getting thrown high. But there was a lot of things on the offense that kind of made me laugh. Like, how did I love Mazio Bennett, but how does he out-snap Nicholas Harbor? It don't make no sense. Like, this offense is confused.
The game plan itself from Dahl Loggins was just complete ass. It's just no way around it. You had too many designed quarterback runs, just way too many. Entirely too much running altogether. I think they had 40 plus rush attempts, way too many. I get that Sellers was struggling pushing the ball down the field. I get that. But you're going to win zero games in the SEC this year. And that includes the Vanderbilt, who.
Yeah, they won.
So with that kind of game plan, it's got to change significantly. And there is a school of thought out there amongst the Gamecock Twitter and Reddit community there that maybe they were just dogging it on the game plan a little bit, not showing too much, if you will, with two big SEC games coming up with Kentucky and LSU. I think that's horseshit too, but it's a rule of thought.
I
thought out there
in New England, so we always were. Belichick was playing chess when everybody else was playing checkers type deal.
Yeah.
It's
that ain't what Dawg Hawkins is doing. He ain't no chess. He ain't no
Bobby Fischer.
I was trying to think of the Russian name guy. I couldn't think of it.
Yeah.
Kasparov.
Yeah.
Last thing on the bad, Kai Kroger appears to have come out slow again. If you
good. Will. You hit him up. We talked about him. Now he'll be on fire the rest of the year.
Yep. We're going to go ahead and slam him and get it out of the way. That way we don't have to do this again. But yeah, I mean, he averaged 41.2 a punt, but he did have one blocked. It is one attempt to pin him deep. He kicked it into the end zone and never really, he had several opportunities to flip the field and couldn't do it.
No.
So we'll see what happens with the punting situation. I think he'll be fine, but we'll see.
I think he'll be fine as well. He has to get his legs out from underneath him. I think they're going to be using him a little bit more than we hoped this year, but I think he'll be okay. All right. Give me the ugly.
We still can't block shit. Nope. That's just straight up facts. Offensive line gave up 4 sacks, which I mentioned earlier. Is down from 9 in last year's season opener. They attempted 56 runs.
Terrible.
56 runs, averaging 3.1 yards per carry. Worse than the SEC after week 1. The best run of the day came on an end around to Jared Brown, and then that reverse field run that Juju had where he was dead to rights in the backfield, but reverse field, and then Lenore Sellers trying to get out and lead block for him, ran him over because he's twice as big as Juju McDowell is. And then they had just multiple silly penalties. I mean, we're getting false start penalties at home when half the crowd's gone after the lightning delay. You're getting multiple ineligible downfield penalties, which is insane. How does that happen in a game? One took a touchdown off the board on special teams, the fake field goal which praise to Kai Kroger. He might be the second best quarterback on the team right now. Just no SEC team gave up more sacks in week 1. Now, granted, no SEC team played anybody of note for the most part outside of LSU and Texas A&M. But they also gave up we mentioned the 4 sacks, but they gave up 10 tackles for loss.
Yeah.
That is off. That, I mean, that's running plays that are just getting blowed up before they ever get started. Then you can't have that.
If you go down this running back room compared to last year's running back room, you would
it's
say
better.
But it's the same product from at week 1 that we saw.
Yeah.
Under 4 yards per attempt and just kick it out of the backfield.
Yeah. It's got to get better. Josiah Thompson did get the start at left tackle. He's going to start again this week. I saw the depth chart earlier today. There is no or at left tackle anymore between him and Tree. It's just Josiah Thompson now.
Yeah, thank you.
So no more Tree. Tree's the swing tackle now.
He can swing his ass right down to the left side of the bench. You know what I'm saying?
Man. He was flagged a couple of times on Saturday when he was in the game.
All right, talk to me about this wide receiver room. Like I said, I don't understand how Mazio Bennett's out snapping Nicholas Harbor.
Yeah,
but
Gage Laverdane, I guess, didn't play.
Nope.
So he got no snaps, did not play. Not even sure he dressed. Dre Jacobs had 4 targets, leading the team. Why?
Yep.
Mazio Bennett had 2 targets, caught both of them. Didn't get much out of it, but he did catch both of them. How the hell does Peyton Mangrum, no offense to Mr. Mangrum, get more targets than Nick Harbor?
I don't know. Don't make sense. There's an issue somewhere.
Where the hell were the tight ends this week? Brady Hunt had 1 target, and that was on the fake field goal that got called back. True freshman Michael Smith started, by the way. They started with a 2 tight end set. He started the game. 3 targets, 2 catches for a whole 4 yards. Joshua Simon, 2 targets, 1 catch, 10 yards. And this will be the last week of Harbor Watch, as that is the next thing. We're just shutting that down. We're closing that service.
Yeah, the dock is shut down until further notice.
Yeah, 2 targets in the game for Harbor. Both were way too high. And I saw this all over as well. You have a guy who is 6'5", 240 pounds, who can outrun any player that will play against him. He will never be jammed because they can't do it. There ain't a corner that can physically do it that he's going to play against. There isn't a corner in this league, in the country, that's going to run with him one-on-one. How the hell are you not trying at least 1-9 route with Nick Harbor every week?
I don't understand it. It's something wrong here.
Make it make sense.
I've been trying. It don't make no sense.
Because I can tell you who Alabama's going to run it with him next year. I can guarantee you that, or Georgia, or wherever the hell he ends up. That's not South Carolina after he transfers after this season.
He's gone. If it continues like this, he is
gone. If you're not going to give him the football, he's going to leave. Everywhere else will let him run track too. I promise.
Yeah, it's a fact. It's not. We ain't holding him here because of that. I don't get it. At first, I started to say, well, maybe he just isn't understanding. I don't know if they understand how to use him.
There's no understanding that. If all he run was go balls the entire game,
got to get a couple, right?
Something.
Who's out jumping him?
Nobody.
Yeah. I don't get it. It's a very, very frustrating segment of the show. We had a lot of hopes and aspirations for it. Maybe week 2 will be something different and we can bring it back. But for right now, the Harbor Watch has been docked and we put the lock on the gate.
Yeah.
All right. This will be another quick segment before we get into the next week's opponent. But recruiting roundup. Talk to me here. I got a question for you after you're all done.
I got nothing. I got nothing to add other than, this is another segment we might just dock because every player that's committed to him probably going to decommit once half or the entire staff gets run off in December anyway.
So this is what I wanted to ask you. Does an ass whipping like this truly affect the 25 class? Like, if they don't figure it out versus Kentucky, do we see players like Caleb Williams, a 4-star defensive lineman, and Lex Cyrus, a 4-star wide receiver?
I mean, they've already had several players bail in this class already.
Right.
So, I mean, I want to say are they even in the top 25 anymore?
I don't think so. They have four 4-stars, no 5-stars in the class. So it's like,
yeah, currently they are 33rd in this class. Or was that? Yeah, for the 2025 class. They've got 19 listed commitments, 3 4-star players, and that's it.
I mean, that's terrible. And if they lose Caleb Williams to Georgia, who was on his tail before he committed to South Carolina, that would be even more of a hit. But I'm just hoping that we turn around and that this isn't something that we're truly worried about come week 5 and 6 of the season, because you know what they say, when it rains it pours and shit rolls downhill. So
yeah, it is what it is. So Nino, you are a Kentucky savant over here, going back to the Will Levis days. 2:30 Central, 3:30 Eastern on ABC. Kentucky, South Carolina's at Kentucky this week.
This is interesting. The Wildcats shut down Southern Mississippi last week.
It's a weird game.
Very weird game.
Game was called at the 10-minute mark of the third quarter because they ran into curfew.
Huh?
Yes. They played 5 minutes of the third quarter on Saturday night, and they called the game because they had a over 2-hour lightning delay to start.
Oh, yes, that's right.
So they did not start this game until 8 o'clock, or it's 8:20 Central Time. So it was 9:20 Eastern. and I guess they have. I didn't read much into it, but I assume that they have some sort of curfew in the state that they couldn't play the game beyond midnight. So they called it, and as it was, and they didn't elect to finish it because they were up 31-0 in the third quarter.
Yeah.
So that's the only. I'm just making assumptions. I actually didn't read anything into that.
I knew there was a lightning delay in the beginning of the game. I didn't know about the curfew. But
And it may not be. I could just be making that up. But
it's very
possible. It sounds right.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to take a deeper look into that. But Brock Vandagriff, first year starter for the Wildcats, came over from Georgia, had 3 touchdowns. He was pretty efficient, 67%. He did have a pick, but it seems as though he's got his feet underneath him. The Gamecocks have been recently exposed by the long ball, those speedy receivers. If Stewart and Kennard can't close the pocket quickly and force Vandagriff out of the pocket, guys like Barry and Brown, who had 2 touchdowns, and newly acquired Macklin, Jerry Macklin's brother, who had 33 yards per catch, in week 1 for them, hurt us. I mean, we mentioned it already. Page already did it for ODU last week. Yeah. So, and these guys, Barry Brown is a way more skilled player than
Barry Brown's a potential first-round pick in the NFL draft next year. It definitely a day 2 pick, I would say, at this stage of his career. Jamori Macklin is another solid player. They've got another receiver too, I think.
Dan
Key, who's another one who can play. They've got a couple of decent running backs. Their offensive line solid. You mentioned Brock Vandagriff. I watched a good bit of the game Saturday night when it started. I thought he looked okay with his placement in the first half. He was a little erratic at times. I want to see if South Carolina, like if they can get after him the way they got after the ODU quarterback the other night, I think it could be interesting. Their other running back, Chip Trayanum, I don't think he played. Yeah, he's out. He didn't play.
Out. He didn't play, and he's out this week. But it didn't really matter. Sumo Kanbaye from week 1, he was well. And, then Liam Combs gone, right? Moved on back to the NFL. But Bush Hampton comes over from Boise State. Yeah. We seen what he did with Aston Genty last year, right? He was turning out the run game. And they averaged 7 yards per carry. Yeah. And the quarterback was one of them as well. So
I'm going to preface this by saying that Southern Miss isn't a very good football team.
No.
As a follower of, I'll tell anybody that I've been to more Southern Miss football games in my lifetime than I have any other college football team.
Okay.
I mean, before South Alabama started their football program, Southern Miss is the closest school to Mobile.
I gotcha.
It's only 90 minutes up the road. So it's and my cousin played at Southern Miss, so I was up there a lot. I still follow Southern Miss because of that to this day, and they're not a very talented football team. Kentucky, and they did push the ball Kentucky several times. They drove it down the field several times in that game, but couldn't finish. They turned the ball over twice inside the 10-yard line. Once in a turnover in the end zone. So they were able to move the football. They just couldn't finish. So I think that gives me some hope, I guess, if our offense can get it figured out this week. It's going to be interesting. Because like I said it last week, and I'll say it again. This is your benchmark program to see where your program is in the SEC, because you're not competing week in, week out with the Alabamas, the Georgias, the top of the heap there. You're competing with the Kentuckys and the Mississippi States and the others to see where you are as a program.
I'll tell you what. I know Old Dominion's nothing special, and Kentucky is a better team. But if we struggled with ODU's defense, Maxwell Harrison is a problem. Okay, he had 6 PBUs last year, 5 picks, 2 to the house. He's a natural turnover machine. Sellers better be aware of number 31 at all times.
Yeah, interesting to me that they moved him from safety to corner.
Yeah, this year he was playing corner. Last year he was a safety.
Yeah, so, that's interesting to me.
He was all over the field though in that
Yeah,
game. He played in the
yeah.
spot. He played
Yeah.
on the corner. He was in the
No,
box. So.
he's really good. I think he's another one. I think with a good season could play his way into the first 3 rounds of the draft.
I agree
Yeah,
there
he's
as
got
well.
great size and he's very rangy. So yeah, I think his ultimate position is big nickel or free safety.
Yeah,
but he's playing boundary for Kentucky, which is interesting.
they
But
needed
yeah,
help bad. I think he's
yeah,
just versatile.
yeah.
But
So
my matchup for me in this game is going to be the running back in Rocket Raheem versus J.J. Weaver and
yeah,
Dumas Johnson. Like,
yeah,
those guys can attack the ball. Dumas Johnson comes from Georgia. You know what I mean? They get downhill and they can attack the ball. If we get that explosiveness out of Sanders, that's going to be a good matchup because both of those guys are not coverage guys. So if we can run the ball and get these guys on their heels, when it comes to maybe a play action or some of these screens when Sellers rolls out, I think South Carolina has the upper hand here. I think these guys are more of these attack the ball, get downhill than they are being able to drop back in coverage. What are your thoughts there?
yeah. No, that's a big matchup for me, and because especially with JJ Weaver, he has that ability to come off the edge as well, and that's going to be especially if you're in long passing situations, that's an issue. Could be an issue for our tackles there. To me, the biggest matchup is going to be your center, Rashawn Lee, going man up or with help from one of your guards with Deion Walker.
Yeah.
Because Deion Walker, to me, is the best NFL prospect on this Kentucky team because he's a big, humongous 340-pound nose tackle that moves like a defensive end. I mean, he is super athletic for a man of his size. To me, that is and he was an issue. He was an issue last year in this game, the entire game for South Carolina. So that's going to be curious to me. That might affect the run game itself.
Yeah, he plugs holes easy.
Yeah, him plugging the holes. They may need to go more, try to run more of those counter plays with Juju, or with maybe run Rocket outside a little, or some of those end arounds with Jared Brown or whatever. Get those defensive ends guessing. Try to run it away from Deion Walker.
End around with Nicholas Harbor, huh?
I don't care. At this point, just get him the football.
You mentioned Walker, and my concern is like, all right, these guys in the middle. Massey Smith got drafted pretty high. What was it, last year or the year before?
Yeah.
As an interior defensive lineman. But is there a chance that he rolls to the outside to the next level?
He's way too big. I mean, he would have to drop 30
He plays.
pounds.
He can play like
he plays like that. But how many 340-pound guys do you see lining up at 5 or?
It makes me concerned. He ends up being like the guy from Baylor 2 years ago.
Ika. Yeah.
Yeah.
Who just got cut. Yeah.
Who was super duper dominant at Baylor.
I would think he would have, or could be more in line for successful Dexter Lawrence than.
Really?
Yeah. Okay. I think so. I think he's that good.
Okay. I like I said,
I don't like drafting those guys high either.
Me, I'm always concerned. Like those are like third round guys to me. That's when I attack that position. You know.
Yeah.
All right. We got to that point. We're predicting scores for this Kentucky game. You're up first. What's up?
Yeah, Kentucky's a 10-point favorite in this game. You know what? I've talked myself into. I'm changing it.
Oh boy.
At first, I had Kentucky 20-6. I'm changing it. I think Kentucky wins this one 23-16. I think South Carolina covers. Kentucky wins the game. South Carolina's won two years in a row after losing like 6 or 7 in a row to Kentucky. So they've won 2 in a row now. But I think South Carolina loses this game by a touchdown late in this one.
See, I could tell the first initial score you had on there was of pure disgust.
Yes.
Coming out of week 1.
Yes.
And now it's some reasoning and some clear thoughts have hit your head, and you're able to go through some things. The reasonability has come to, and we've seen an actual score that I'm with because I'm right there. I got 21-17 Kentucky. I think that we get a touchdown from Sanders on the ground. I think you get another Sellers touchdown on the ground. I think it's another week of trying to figure it out in the air. I think it gets over 55% completion percentage because I think they dial down where they're going to throw. I think you're going to see a lot of dunk and dink out of him. If Gage plays, now you can use Gage and Jared Brown over the middle with the speed. Kind of just. I don't think linebackers for Kentucky can stay with the speed of Brown, no less than the shiftiness of Gage. He's not the biggest guy, right? It's like he's 5'10 or 5'11 Gage.
Yeah.
So but they're shifty. They can work the middle of the field. I think that's going to be their biggest asset. I think you might see a little more Attaway in this out of the backfield catching the ball. He could be an asset as well with Sellers in like an RPO style.
Not something they did absolutely none of in the game on Saturday.
I was surprised that because Juju McDowell lined up in the backfield with Sellers in an RPO style, or if they used them like how BC used Ward last night in these wheel routes, I think that could be a recipe for success where you're not asking Sellers to do too much, right? Simple 5-yard throws to the sideline to hit the open guy. I think they're going to simplify this playbook. I mean, it was simple, but I think they're going to simplify it a little bit more.
I don't know how much more simple they can do.
I'd be surprised if you saw.
If anything, I think they need to open it up a little bit more.
I don't know if he's ready to throw the ball downfield, man. I think you need to let him manage for a week or two and get some confidence underneath him. I think with a young kid like that starts overthrowing balls in the first quarter right off the rip, running around in the pocket and getting sacked, kind of takes the air out of your sail, right? Like you need to be at this guy easy throws. You started when the true freshman at tight end is is leading the targets in the room. It's a problem. We need Simon to be that security blanket for Sellers early and often, okay? If we're not going to push the ball downfield, let's run a ball, play action to your tight end so your back's out of the backfield to keep him comfortable with easy throws.
Some screens, something.
Yeah, something to get easy under 10
Did they run a single screen? I don't
think that
remember.
was a wide receiver screen to Jared Brown, but that might have been about it. I was disgusted at the game plan. I know you want to say that people, on the social media outlets to say that they wanted to, dial it down. Kentucky's not a top 25 program, folks. They weren't trying to hide it from like the big dogs here. This wasn't good. The game plan wasn't good. The performance wasn't good. And I'm not saying Kentucky's gonna just run away with it, but I just think that their machine's running more on, synthetic oil at the moment. Well, we're running on crude to get this ship going.
Yeah. To have any chance at a bowl game, they need this win. I'm going to say they're out if they lose this game, but it's just looking at the schedule.
They lose this game, they're lucky they get 4.
Yeah, you're probably right.
Because I know you said you had them possibly at a bowl game, maybe one over. I think they get ran over. If this team shows up from week 1 against Oklahoma.
Here's how I think they can get to 6, even with the loss. If you lose this week, lose to LSU, beat Akron, you're going to lose to Ole Miss, you're going to lose to Alabama, you're probably going to lose to Oklahoma. You've got to beat Texas A&M, you've got to beat Vanderbilt, and you've got to beat Wofford, and then you got to beat Clemson with a loss probably to Missouri.
I mean, Clemson looked just as bad offensively as we did.
Right.
So
that team's bad.
And so it's Texas A&M.
Yeah. That's why I put toss up on those 2 games where
you would hope at that point in the season those Sellers would have figured it out.
Right.
Because I mean that's the route. It won't be easy though.
Yeah, no, it's a lot easier to a bowl game if you can win Saturday.
Absolutely. And if you can win Saturday by like 10, where you're like, okay, we were 10-point underdog. That's a 20-point swing. We're cooking now with dirty, canola. We got something going. We're making progress. If we squeak out the victory or we just lose in a bad fashion, I'm still super concerned. Super concerned.
Yeah. It's like I said, you got LSU the following week, early morning kickoff at home.
Yeah,
if you lose by double digits to Kentucky, what's that enthusiasm level going to be like that early on Saturday?
I'll be 35 points in the first half. You'd be down.
Probably.
I made a bold statement. I don't think LSU loses another game the rest of the season. I truly. This is my point. When you see Nick Saban on the sideline, when he's got that stank face on and he's not talking to nobody, watch out, right? You just stay away. The mad scientist is at work. When the giddy guy who's making accents, doing a two-step, is pounding the table, red face, you stay away from that guy because he's pissed. Brian Kelly was genuinely
he was
pissed off, right? And it was the same outlook. Didn't push the ball downfield. You did the same thing you did last year in week 1. You didn't learn. I think LSU, if we don't figure this out against Kentucky, we might get mercy ruled by halftime. So, all right, my guy, this is a great episode. Hopefully, when we come back next week, we got a dub. We're 1-1, and we're positive. We're looking at the future and possible development of Lenore Sellers. I'll tell you something right now. If it's not a W and we don't look better, Dole Loggins is. I'm going to be pounding the voodoo doll of Dole Loggins going into the next episode because it's getting real ugly, and I'm getting tired of seeing the same monotonous shit.
Yep.
I'm Nino Brown, CFP Nation. That's my guy, Brian Bosarge. This is the Garnett Roost. Go Gamecocks. Spurs up.